Welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be using these PVC cleanout fittings to add a threaded lid feature to a custom urn. So you can see me here right off the bat using a set of digital calipers to establish the size of a tenon that we're going to use in a jam chuck. And if you follow me, you know that I'm really fond of jam chucks, and jam chucks are really useful for getting you out of all kinds of holding situations at the lathe. So what you really want is a good tight friction fit here. You want to make sure that it's going to hold your part securely for the modifications we need to make. So now that we have it on there, we can go ahead and remove the little knobs that are on the pipe for use with pipe clamps to tighten it up and clean up the face of it. We don't need those things for our application, so we can go ahead and get rid of those. I used a ruler to check and make sure it's flat across the front. Then I didn't get the footage of me cutting the jam chuck for this, but it is a jam chuck that we're using. And it's important that the jam chuck have a tight fit because you want to make sure that it gets mounted at center and runs true. So we go ahead and take a parting tool and cut off the parts we don't need, including the big square nut on the top. And we're going to be using that for our lid. So this is the underside of the lid of the urn, and I've added a small piece of poplar that I've glued on to receive the male threads for our threaded lid. And here I'm just cleaning up the remaining material now that I know what size it needs to be. And then I'm going to mark the tenon so that I can cut off the parts I don't need. And then I'll use a couple gouges to clean up the inside, since this is going to be a part that's seen when it's open, although it won't be open very often. But I just want to make sure that it's nice. This is as good a time as any to thank you for watching this video and to encourage you to consider clicking the like button. And if you like what I do here, also consider subscribing and clicking the little notification bell so you don't miss any new content. Also, if you find this content of value to you, suggest it to your family and friends. That really helps us out a lot. Now that I have this area cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and do my final test fit of the threaded part. Now that that's all set up, I'm going to go ahead and epoxy it onto the tenon. And it may seem like I'm doing the epoxy right on the bed of my lathe. I'm not. There's packaging tape there, kind of to set up as a place to put the epoxy to just make it a little more convenient. And you want to make sure you get a good amount of epoxy on there because it's the only thing that's going to hold your threads to your parts. But also not so much that it runs all over the place. And there was just a little bit of epoxy that kind of bubbled up to the surface. And I didn't want it to run down the face of that plug. So I took the chuck off the lathe and set it vertical so that it could level itself with gravity. So now we got to turn our attention back to the female threaded part. And I basically took a measurement and made a mark of how much of it that I needed. And I'm just going to go ahead and part this off. You remember that I prepared this in an earlier step. That jam chuck actually fit really well, and it was actually really hard to get that off of there. So go ahead and test. I'm going to go ahead and test fit the parts together again. And now that I know they fit together nicely, I'm going to go ahead and mount it on the lathe and clean up that front face. Now it might look like that's running out of true. It's not. So now that that's been all cleaned up, then we're going to go ahead and put some epoxy into the base of the urn. So this worked out really well, and there's a lot of different applications to use these clean out fittings to create threaded lids for your turning. And they come in a variety of sizes and they're pretty inexpensive. I think it's a great solution. Anyway, thank you for joining me in the shop again. I've said that a few times. I hope you get a chance to try this at some point. And remember, dread not and make something. Peace.